What happens when the most powerful advocate in WWE history finally gets called to answer for years of manipulation, chaos, and calculated destruction? What happens when a general manager who's been pushed to his absolute breaking point decides enough is enough? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WWE Sphere, and tonight we're diving deep into one of the most explosive confrontations Monday Night Raw has witnessed in years. Adam Pearce, the man tasked with maintaining order in the madness that is WWE's flagship show, finally stood face to face with Paul Heyman, the special counsel to Roman Reigns, the wise man, the advocate, the man who has pulled strings and orchestrated chaos like a maestro conducting a symphony of destruction. And what happened? Pearce didn't just confront Heyman, he sanctioned him. He drew a line in the sand that sent shockwaves through the entire WWE universe. So buckle up, because we're about to break down every single moment of this incredible segment, the history that led us here, the tensions that have been building for months, and what this means for the future of Monday Night Raw and the entire WWE landscape. Let me take you back to that moment on Raw. The arena is electric. The crowd is buzzing with anticipation because word has already spread backstage that something major is about to go down. Adam Pearce's music hits, and the Raw general manager makes his way to the ring with a look on his face that we rarely see. This isn't the diplomatic Adam Pearce who tries to be fair and balanced. This isn't the company man who smooths things over and finds compromises. No, this is a man who has reached his limit. You can see it in his eyes, in the way he's carrying himself, in the tension in his jaw. He's had enough of the games, the manipulation, the disrespect, and the absolute chaos that Paul Heyman and his association with the Bloodline has brought to Monday Night Raw week after week after week. Pearce grabs a microphone, and before he can even get a word out, the crowd is already chanting. They know what's coming. They've been waiting for this moment just as long as Pearce has. And then he speaks. His voice is controlled, but you can hear the anger simmering just beneath the surface. He talks about his job, about his responsibility to the WWE Universe, to the superstars in the locker room, and to the integrity of Monday Night Raw itself. He talks about how he's tried to be patient, tried to be understanding, tried to let things play out naturally because that's what great wrestling is all about. Competition, opportunity, letting the best rise to the top. But then his tone shifts. He starts listing the infractions, the incidents, the moments where Paul Heyman has crossed the line. Remember when Heyman interfered in that #1 Contenders match 3 weeks ago? Remember when he distracted the referee during that championship match, allowing his client to retain through questionable means? Remember the countless times he stuck his nose in business that had nothing to do with him, pulling strings backstage, making demands, threatening superstars, and treating Monday Night Raw like his personal playground? Pearce lays it all out, and with each example, the crowd gets louder. They're feeding off his energy. They're right there with him because they've witnessed all of it too. And then, the moment we've all been waiting for. Heyman's music hits. That familiar theme that has accompanied so many historic moments in WWE history. The special counsel himself walks out, and you can already see the trademark smirk on his face. Paul Heyman is a master manipulator, a genius with words, a man who can talk himself out of almost any situation. He's been doing this for decades. He's stood across from legends, general managers, commissioners, and he's always found a way to come out on top. As he walks down that ramp, you can almost see the wheels turning in his head. He's calculating, strategizing, figuring out exactly what he's going to say to turn this situation to his advantage. Heyman enters the ring, and the two men stand face to face. The contrast is striking. Adam Pearce, the former National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Champion, a man who's been in the ring with the best and knows what it takes to survive in this business. And Paul Heyman, the advocate, the wise man, the man who has been the voice of champions from Brock Lesnar to CM Punk to Roman Reigns. The tension is palpable. You could cut it with a knife. The entire arena has gone quiet, hanging on every word, waiting to see who will speak first. Heyman, being Heyman, breaks the silence with that condescending chuckle he's so famous for. He addresses Pearce with false respect, calling him Mr. General Manager, emphasizing every syllable like it's a joke. He talks about how he's simply been doing his job, representing his client's interests, making sure that the tribal chief, the head of the table, receives the treatment and respect that he deserves as the top champion in this industry. He spins every interference, every manipulation, every questionable moment as simply being a good advocate. He's protecting his investment. He's ensuring success. What general manager wouldn't want someone so dedicated to excellence on their brand? But Pearce isn't buying it. Not for 1 second. He cuts Heyman off mid-sentence, and the crowd erupts. He tells Heyman that he's seen through the facade, that everyone has seen through it. The justifications, the excuses, the clever wordplay, none of it matters anymore because actions have consequences. And Paul Heyman's actions have finally caught up with him. Pearce reminds Heyman that while he may be the wise man, while he may be the special counsel, while he may represent the biggest star in the company, he is still subject to the rules and regulations of Monday Night Raw. Nobody is above the show. Not Roman Reigns. Not the Bloodline. And certainly not Paul Heyman. The crowd is going absolutely ballistic at this point. They're chanting Pearce's name. They're sensing that something huge is about to happen. And Heyman, for the first time, looks slightly uncomfortable. That smirk is still there, but it's wavering. He tries to interject, tries to steer the conversation back to his control, but Pearce is on a roll now. He's got the momentum, and he's not letting it go. And then comes the sanction. Pearce announces that effective immediately, Paul Heyman is banned from ringside for all matches involving Roman Reigns or any member of the Bloodline for the next 30 days. The arena explodes. This is huge. This is game-changing. Paul Heyman has been the constant presence at ringside for years. He's the one calling the shots, directing traffic, interfering when necessary. Without him there, the Bloodline is vulnerable in ways they haven't been in years. But Pearce isn't done. He adds that if Heyman violates this sanction, if he's caught anywhere near the ring during those matches, he will be indefinitely suspended from WWE programming. No Raw. No SmackDown. No premium live events. Gone. The gravity of this sanction hits everyone at once. Heyman's face goes from smug to shocked to angry in the span of seconds. He's stammering now, trying to protest, trying to argue, trying to find some loophole or technicality that he can exploit. He demands to speak with higher authority, threatens legal action, brings up his contract and his rights. But Pearce stands firm. The decision has been made. The sanction is official. And security is already making their way down the ramp to escort Heyman from the ring if necessary. What makes this moment so incredible isn't just the sanction itself, but the journey that led us here. Let's rewind for a moment and talk about the history between these two men, between Paul Heyman and WWE authority figures, and why this confrontation was so inevitable and so satisfying when it finally happened. Paul Heyman has been a thorn in the side of authority figures for literally decades. From his days running ECW and thumbing his nose at the wrestling establishment, to his time as the advocate for Brock Lesnar where he manipulated title matches and contract negotiations, to his current role as the special counsel to Roman Reigns where he's helped build the most dominant championship reign in modern WWE history. Heyman has always operated in the gray areas, always pushed boundaries, always found ways to bend the rules without quite breaking them completely. He's a master of the game, and he knows it. Adam Pearce, on the other hand, represents something different. He's a wrestler who paid his dues, worked his way up through the independent scene, became a multiple-time NWA World Champion, and transitioned into an authority role in WWE because of his knowledge, his respect for the business, and his ability to manage the absolute chaos that comes with running a show like Monday Night Raw. Pearce has always tried to be fair. He's tried to give everyone opportunities, tried to maintain competitive balance, tried to ensure that matches are decided by the competitors in the ring, not by outside interference or manipulation. But over the past several months, that's become increasingly impossible with Paul Heyman involved. Every time Pearce tried to book a fair match, Heyman found a way to tilt the scales. Every time Pearce tried to create an opportunity for a rising star, Heyman was there to protect the Bloodline's interests. Every time Pearce tried to bring order to the show, Heyman brought chaos. And it all came to a head in the weeks leading up to this confrontation. Think about what happened 3 weeks ago. Pearce had set up a triple threat match to determine the #1 contender for the United States Championship. 3 incredibly talented superstars going at it with everything on the line. The match was fantastic, back and forth action, near falls, big spots, everything you want in a #1 contenders match. But just as one of the competitors was about to hit their finishing move and secure the victory, Paul Heyman appeared at ringside. He didn't physically interfere, mind you. He's too smart for that. But he distracted the referee, started an argument about some imaginary rule violation, and in the chaos, another competitor rolled up the distracted wrestler for the pin. The wrong man won because of Heyman's interference. Pearce was furious. He came out the next week and tried to address the situation, tried to make it right, but Heyman had an answer for everything. He claimed he was simply exercising his right to observe the match as a WWE personality. He claimed he had legitimate concerns about the officiating. He brought up precedent and contract clauses and technicalities that made Pearce's head spin. And legally, technically, Heyman hadn't done anything that Pearce could definitively punish him for. So the result stood, and Heyman walked away with another victory. But that was just the beginning. The following week, there was a tag team match involving members of the Bloodline. Pearce had specifically warned Heyman to stay backstage, to let the match play out without any interference. Heyman agreed, gave Pearce his word, looked him right in the eye and promised he would respect the general manager's wishes. And what happened? Halfway through the match, Heyman's music hit. He didn't come to ringside, but the distraction was enough. The Bloodline's opponents turned to look at the entrance ramp, expecting Heyman to appear, and in that split second of distraction, they were hit with finishing moves and pinned. Heyman never technically violated Pearce's order because he never came to ringside, but he still influenced the match, still manipulated the outcome. These incidents kept piling up. Week after week, Heyman found new ways to insert himself into situations, to protect the Bloodline, to maintain their dominance, and to make Adam Pearce's job absolutely impossible. And the frustration wasn't just coming from Pearce. The entire locker room was getting fed up. Superstars who had worked their entire lives for an opportunity to shine on Monday Night Raw were seeing those opportunities ruined by Heyman's interference. Young talent trying to make a name for themselves were being held back by the Bloodline's machine with Heyman at the controls. Veterans who deserved one more shot at glory were being denied because Heyman was protecting his client's spot at the top of the card. The locker room started coming to Pearce with complaints, with demands, with frustration. What are you going to do about this? When are you going to stand up to Heyman? How long are you going to let this continue? And Pearce, to his credit, was trying. He was documenting everything, building a case, making sure that when he finally did take action, it would stick. He couldn't just make an emotional decision. He needed evidence, precedent, justification that would hold up under scrutiny from WWE management and from Heyman's inevitable legal challenges. And then came the final straw. 2 weeks before this confrontation, there was a championship match. I'm not going to spoil all the details because that's a story for another video, but let's just say that Heyman's interference crossed a line even by his standards. He didn't just distract or manipulate. He physically put his hands on a referee, creating a situation that directly changed the outcome of a championship match. The crowd was in disbelief. The commentary team was calling it a disgrace. Social media exploded with outrage. And Adam Pearce knew that this was it. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. This was the indisputable evidence he needed to finally take action. So when Pearce called Heyman to the ring on this episode of Raw, everyone knew something major was about to happen. The anticipation had been building for weeks. The WWE Universe was ready. The locker room was ready. And most importantly, Adam Pearce was ready. Back to that ring, to that confrontation, to that moment when Pearce laid down the sanction. Heyman is beside himself. He's arguing, he's threatening, he's doing everything he can to talk his way out of this. But for once, words aren't enough. Pearce has made his decision, and he's backed by WWE management. The sanction stands. Security is in the ring now, not aggressively, but making it clear that Heyman needs to leave. And as Heyman is escorted out of the ring and up the ramp, he's shouting back at Pearce, promising that this isn't over, that there will be consequences, that Pearce has made the biggest mistake of his career. The crowd is eating it up. They're chanting "Na na na na, hey hey hey, goodbye" as Heyman is forced to leave. It's a moment of catharsis for everyone who's been frustrated by Heyman's antics for months or even years. Finally, someone stood up to him. Finally, there are real consequences. Finally, justice is served. But as satisfying as this moment is, it raises so many questions about what happens next. How will Roman Reigns and the Bloodline respond to their Wiseman being sanctioned? How will they perform in matches without Heyman's guidance and interference at ringside? Will this sanction actually change anything, or will Heyman find new ways to influence events from backstage? Will there be retaliation against Adam Pearce? And what does this mean for the power structure on Monday Night Raw going forward? Let's start with the Bloodline. For years, they've operated as a well-oiled machine with Roman Reigns as the dominant champion, Solo Sikoa, and the rest of the family as his enforcers, and Paul Heyman as the brains of the operation. Heyman has been the one strategizing, the one planning, the one finding advantages and exploiting weaknesses. Without him at ringside, the Bloodline is going to have to adapt. They're still incredibly talented, still incredibly powerful, but they've become so dependent on Heyman's presence that his absence could expose vulnerabilities. Think about Roman Reigns himself. He's one of the most dominant champions in WWE history, no question about that. But how many of his successful title defenses have involved Heyman at some critical moment? How many times has Heyman distracted an opponent, interfered with a referee, or created just enough chaos to give Roman the edge he needed? Without that safety net, Roman is going to have to prove that he can retain his championship on his own merits. And while I have no doubt that he's capable of doing so, the psychological impact of not having Heyman there cannot be underestimated. For Solo Sikoa and the other members of the Bloodline, this is equally challenging. They've been protected by Heyman's schemes just as much as Roman has. Now they're going to have to step up and prove their worth without that protection. This could be an opportunity for them to show their true abilities, or it could expose weaknesses that Heyman has been covering up all along. And then there's the question of how the Bloodline will respond to this sanction. They're not going to just accept it and move on. There's going to be retaliation. There has to be. Their Wiseman, the man who's been instrumental in their success, has been publicly humiliated and sanctioned by the Raw general manager. They can't let that slide without losing face. So what form will that retaliation take? Will they target Adam Pearce directly? Will they take out their frustration on Pearce's allies in the locker room? Will they cause so much chaos that Pearce has no choice but to lift the sanction just to restore order? This brings us to another fascinating aspect of this situation. Adam Pearce has painted a target on his back. He knew this was going to happen when he made the decision to sanction Heyman, and he did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. But now he's going to have to deal with the consequences. The Bloodline is the most dangerous faction in WWE. They've destroyed careers, ended championship reigns, and left a trail of broken bodies in their wake. And now their focus is going to be on the man who dared to sanction their Wiseman. Pearce is going to need allies. He's going to need protection. He's going to need superstars in the locker room who are willing to stand with him against the Bloodline. And fortunately, there's no shortage of wrestlers who have been victimized by the Bloodline and who would love nothing more than to help Pearce fight back. This could lead to some incredible alliances, some unexpected partnerships, some amazing storytelling as the locker room divides into those who support Pearce's decision and those who think he's gone too far. There's also the question of what Paul Heyman himself is going to do during this 30-day suspension from ringside. Heyman is not someone who just sits quietly and accepts punishment. He's going to be working behind the scenes, pulling strings, making calls, finding loopholes. Maybe he can't be at ringside, but can he influence matches from backstage? Can he send messages to Roman and the Bloodline through intermediaries? Can he use his connections and his influence to make Pearce's life miserable in ways that don't technically violate the sanction? And what about after the 30 days are up? Assuming Heyman doesn't violate the sanction and get himself indefinitely suspended, what happens when he's allowed back at ringside? Will he have learned anything from this experience? Will he be more careful, more subtle in his interference? Or will he come back with a vengeance, more determined than ever to prove that nobody can control Paul Heyman? The implications of this sanction extend beyond just Heyman and the Bloodline. This is a statement from Adam Pearce and WWE management that there are limits to what will be tolerable.